Now I can make a partial of absolutely anything in my schemas. Um, and because I'm using JavaScript, I'm just using a programming language. I, I, I can manipulate that however I need across my site. I saw somebody share a screenshot once of a project that we've been working on. They'd integrated my plugin, and in the space of a couple of days, they'd reduced 32,000 lines of schema down to 1,000. That just goes to show
Whoa.
just how beneficial it can be. I think that speaks for itself, really.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another exciting edition of the Liquid Weekly podcast. I'm your host, Karl Meisterheim. With me, as always, the esteemed Taylor Page. Taylor, good morning.
Good morning, Karl.
Taylor, you may have noticed the name of the newsletter and podcast is Liquid Weekly.
Hmm.
Do
I
you know
have?
why I
Yeah.
called it Liquid Weekly?
No idea. No.
It's not
Sounds
because I
good.
know a lot about Liquid. In fact, I don't know very much about Liquid. It's because I didn't want to be sued by Shopify for calling it Shopify Weekly, because that would not be good. But
Right. Good call.
we found someone who actually knows a lot about Liquid, and we tricked him into
Hmm.
coming on with us this morning. His name is Dave Warrington. He's a senior demo engineer over there at Shopify. Dave, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
Of course.
I'm
How are you?
yeah, long time fan. Yeah, I'm very good. Just wanted to say that I'm not the type of person to put stickers on my laptop, but I do have a Liquid Weekly sticker on
Oh,
my
snap.
work
What?
laptop, so I hope you're honoured.
Yeah, I'm
That's
very honored.
awesome.
Thank you.
I didn't even get one of those. How'd you get one?
Gave
Karl
me
was passing them out to
some.
everyone but me.
Really? You didn't get one?
I don't
Oh,
think I
I'll bring
did.
you one on Sunday.
Okay, cool. Yes.
Anyway, very cool. I appreciate that, Dave. I didn't actually put one on my own laptop, so.
Now, Dave, quick question. Like, do you not normally put them on your laptop just because you're like, this is like a finely crafted machine kind of like Carl's got this kind of like snooty thing of like why he won't put stickers on
That
laptops
is
and
not,
he
you don't
likes
know
to
the
to
reason. I
make
never
fun of
told you the
me.
reason.
And so like I am like a big sticker on the laptop fan. So that's what's your reason? That was the last time you were making fun of me about it. That was like
Because it can't
it's
be
hilarious.
undone.
That's fair. Just to an extent, I've seen some people put like the covers on and then they put the stickers on the
Yeah.
cover, and then so that's not bad. But what are you gonna do with it after? What does it matter if you can't be on? It's not like a tattoo, you know. I mean, you could take the time to get that thing off and like
Look,
all the
let's
sticky stuff, you know.
we dragged Dave onto the show, and I'm not going to argue with you about stickers. I want to hear from Dave. So, Dave,
Oh, that's
You
tell
want my
us how
justification?
tell us about your story. How did you get into the development world, and how did you end up at Shopify? And how did you become a renowned expert on all things liquid?
Um, I turned up in the Shopify space completely by accident. I was just going through university and was offered an internship at one of the Plus partners here in the UK, Strawberry, and I guess they were happy enough with the work I was doing, so they offered me a job when I finished university. Stayed there for 3 years and thoroughly enjoyed it. And while I was there, I think, as a lot of developers do, I thought that I knew better than everybody else about how to write code. So I decided to start a blog to share my opinions. And then I started to find a couple of things that weren't documented in Liquid, things that you weren't supposed to be able to do. And I wanted to share those things. And that's how it started, really. That's where I really decided that I just love Liquid to bits.
Interesting. So, did you come from any kind of Rails development background?
Nope.
No.
I
Okay.
literally, at university, that was where I learned JavaScript. So I am fairly firmly seated within the JavaScript TypeScript ecosystem.
Gotcha. I was just curious if you had worked with ERB and then moved on to Liquid and comparing the two, but no, it's Liquid. That's good. So, what sort of drove you into kind of digging deeper into Liquid? Like, they even begin to look for ways that you could do things that aren't documented. Like, was that just stuff you stumbled upon, or were you the kind of guy that likes to look for the edge cases and find the hidden levers?
I wouldn't say that I usually am. it was totally by accident. So I think the first thing I discovered with Liquid was how to create an array that's not an array of strings. Um, I figured out how to do that completely by accident, and it's proven so useful to me over the years that now every time a new feature comes out in Liquid, I'm always thinking, okay, this is how it's documented on how you're supposed to use it. What can I do that's not documented? Let's see what breaks, what doesn't.
Gotcha.
Now, if you're running analytics on your blog, is that like the most viewed, most read blog post ever kind of type thing? Because that's I feel like
Um,
I've referenced that so many times.
I really wish it was. Disappointingly, I've got a couple of blog posts about Astra, and they seem to do pretty well.
Oh, okay.
Outside of that, from my Liquid blog posts, the one I have is actually outdated now as well, and it's about I can't think what it's called, the variable contexts within Liquid. Um,
Okay.
for example, you have your global variables, your
Hmm.
snippet level variables. This was written before render was a tag, and I have
Uh-huh.
been lazy and just never updated it. So,
Uh-huh.
so
That's
hopefully
awesome.
there aren't too many people out there going around with this outdated information.
You're spreading misinformation now. That's cool.
It's hard to
Now you
keep
have to.
it's hard to keep stuff updated though too. Like when you especially when you put out a post like that, it's just like, hey, like even going back and putting like a hey, like this is deprecated now, like do this instead. This is better. But it's hard to remember to go back and do all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah,
But I'm surprised.
absolutely.
I would have assumed like that the better arrays would have been the thing. So that's
Yeah,
awesome though.
it should be. It deserves to be.
Now, correct my understanding. Like Liquid's an open source project. So are these changes things that you can find in the source repo? Does Shopify keep a certain set of them behind closed doors?
Yeah, so Shopify isn't running like the pure open source
Right, they've
version.
got
It's
their
got
own
its
version.
own, I guess, enhancements. So, for example,
The good
things like the
stuff.
product, yeah. So things like product drops, collection drops, they're not part of Liquid the language. They're baked into Shopify's implementation, I guess.
Gotcha. Very good. And you've been at Shopify now for 2 years?
Yes. Next month it'll be 2 years.
Wow.
It's awesome.
And how's that experience been for you?
It's been really fun. So, in the demo engineering team, I think we basically do the fun stuff, like the fun side of working in an agency. So, I don't know how this compares to like working freelance or the experience that you two have, but my experience working in agencies is um, every feature that you want to work on is basically the merchant wants it as quickly and as cheaply as possible. And then half of the jobs that you get are like, can we have a control to increase the size of this text? And it's like, yeah, in our role, we don't have to worry about those at all. So so I guess 50% of our role is creating demos for enterprise merchants, and essentially it's the fun jobs that you get in agency. So like we have a product customizer. We have this like super custom app that we need to like you to build to show that this can work with Shopify, and we just get to throw that together. Um, we get to basically avoid all of the crap work that you get in agencies. And then on top of that, we also maintain a few tools, like internal tools. So I guess that's the really satisfying work where we're actually working on our own products that people internally at Shopify are using. Probably can't say too much about them today, but yeah, that's where the really satisfying work comes from, for me at least.
So for folks that aren't familiar with like the purpose of a demo engineer, is it primarily to attract new customers to Shopify to show them what's possible for like maybe larger enterprise customers that have a particular use case, or is there another aspect to it?
Um, so we get involved when they're already in talks with the solutions engineers at Shopify. So it's not really to attract them. I guess it's in a way to just keep them on track and reassure them that Shopify can meet their needs.
It's
That sounds
awesome.
like a lot of
I've,
fun.
I've often referred to you guys as like the Black Ops team of Shopify. Of like y'all are just like just coming in and like figuring out like this is the really hard stuff or the really fun stuff to build and just cranking that out. So that's really funny. I've not heard you or anyone on the team before talk about that I've talked to, at least, kind of like that's a really good selling point, right? Like that you don't have to deal with kind of like the stuff some of us freelancers or contractors have to deal with, of like, the stuff you just don't want to do. That's really
Yeah,
cool. You get to focus on like the hard or the complex problems, kind of like figuring out how to make things work the Shopify way, which is really cool.
yeah, absolutely. And it's also fun as well because these demos, I'd say 90% of them, we don't have to worry about making them responsive. So it's like just, fix a viewport size. You've only got to worry about that for the sake of the
Dude,
demo.
what? You don't
Yeah,
have to worry about like patching Safari, like mobile Safari issues and all this stuff or whatever.
nope.
Like, ah,
Unless the merchant has specifically requested, like,
yeah,
we
yeah,
need to
yeah.
see this. Yeah. And then as well, another great thing is because these are relatively short term, they're not going to have real visitors on the demos. We can play with the new browser APIs. So it's like as soon as something comes out that's interesting, I get to experiment with it. And that's really fun as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very, very cool. So, and some of, like you'd mentioned too, like, so not just the demo engineering side of things. So that's kind of maybe the closest to like client facing or merchant facing that you get, but like getting to build some of the internal tooling. I know, like you said, you can't talk about or do some of these things, but you've worked on a lot of other projects as well that you've kind of brought to the dev community too, that I definitely want to make sure that we get to talk about, like outside of just some of the really cool Liquid stuff. So we'll definitely include in the show notes, like Dave has a fantastic blog that has all sorts of Liquid things. That's why I just assumed like the better arrays was like one of your top ones, because like I said, just because I probably hit that like 3 or 4 times a month still yet. So like at least. So as far as maybe some of the other projects that you're proud of that you can share. I know we had talked about a couple of other things, because you obviously have this really good, deep understanding of Liquid, and then you also have this affinity for JavaScript too. And so some of the stuff that you've worked on that I thought was really cool, that kind of like brought them together, because you'd built even kind of this like section schema, right? Like with JavaScript essentially, or something like that, or there were some packages and
Yeah.
stuff. And I think we had talked about this a little bit before messages, like several months ago. It's like I need to get better at this, man. Like I need to get better at this kind of type stuff with some tooling and build stuff. So I don't know if there's anything about that like you could share specifically, or things that you wanted to talk about there.
Yeah. I don't think it's really worth doing a screen share because I haven't prepared a demo of it or anything. But
Yeah, it's cool.
so the schema thing, it actually started out um, about 5 years ago. So I originally had a Webpack plugin that allowed us to do this. And the reason this happened is it was like pre-OS 2.0. And at the time, don't know if either of you remember, but you'd have a client and they'd need like a new landing page every quarter, and you couldn't reuse sections on multiple pages. So I think most teams, what they ended up doing was they had one landing page section that was it was including all of the sections that they built for the home page, but squashing them so they wouldn't use blocks. And then
No,
every
no idea
time
what you're
they
talking about there. Yeah, none of us did that. That's we just hand built them every time. That's
Well, maybe I was just too lazy, so I did it this way.
no, that's
But
that's that's what everybody was doing.
yeah, yeah. But even building it like this was it was a chore because yeah, it was great when someone said we need a new landing page. It's like okay, I'll just copy the page, the section template. But then when they said I want a new setting in this section, it's like okay, I've got to update 40 of these landing page template schemas, and I've got to remember to update it on the homepage section too. Um, this was like every time I worked on projects with this, there would be inconsistencies. There would be certain sections which were missing a setting. So I just decided it would be simpler at the time to write it in JavaScript because I recognized that the schema is just JSON. So write it in JavaScript and then render that against all of the files using a Webpack plugin. Um, but then there were other like additional benefits too. So I think at the time, like there wasn't any official Shopify editor tooling for Liquid, and if I recall, the Panoply Al Sissel's VS Code Liquid plugin, I think it didn't have language support for the JSON inside the schema, so you didn't get any syntax highlighting or anything. If you accidentally left a trailing comma in your schema, it was like, okay, now I've got to copy the schema into a JSON validator to see where this bug has happened. It's like it's just easier to write JavaScript and let that handle converting whatever code I've written to properly formatted JSON for me. Um, yeah, so that's really how it happened. But then as soon as I built it, it became apparent that there were even more benefits. Like now I can make a partial of absolutely anything in my schemas. Um, and because I'm using JavaScript, I'm just using a programming language. I, I, I can manipulate that however I need across my site. I saw somebody share a screenshot once of a project they've been working on. They'd integrated my plugin, and in the space of a couple of days, they'd reduced 32,000 lines of schema down to 1,000. So that just goes to show
Whoa.
just how beneficial it can be. I think that speaks for itself, really.
Yeah, that part in it is huge, and I think that's where when we were talking about it, I don't know if you have insights on this too. Like, I think that would be an interesting thing to talk about when you're talking about theme dev. A lot of us, if we're going to try to stay like native Shopify as much as possible, a lot of instances, like I'll completely avoid any kind of build process, right? Like I totally understand why agencies do this, right? From that perspective of obviously in that instance too, like you've got some significant benefits there as well, whether it comes to like management or performance, even from that standpoint of like just shipping code faster. And so I think that's where me as a freelancer, I try to figure that out a lot of times is like I don't want to kind of make this merchant beholden to me as a freelancer or somebody else or whatever. I think it's easier when you're in an agency because they kind of control the whole a lot of times even the content pipeline, right? Like the merchant's not coming in and making changes. It's like it's just someone in the agency's coming in, and so they can respect a build process. But when I'm working with folks, I just have a hard time having them keep like the main GitHub integrated branch on prod. Like that's probably one of my biggest struggles. So trying to figure out how I can safely incorporate build tools even to there to be more performant, to be more productive for merchants and stuff like this, so that way we can make changes faster for them when they need it. I think it's a good thing. I don't know if you have any wisdom or guidance there about like where you pick and choose like to bring in a build process, or when you're just like, nah, like you should just stay like just straight Shopify here. Like we don't need to incorporate a build process into this.
Yeah, so when I was working at by association only, this was just before I started at Shopify, working there for 2 years. OS2 came out just as I started, and we decided to go without build tools and just go completely vanilla. And I was pleasantly surprised at just how easy that was to do. So I would say I genuinely think that most projects do not need a build tool. I think the schema tool that I've built is one of those things where, especially for example, if you were building your own horizon, that's the schemas. There are so many shared settings in there. That's the kind of project where you're really going to see benefits from the schema tool. But in terms of build tools in general, I would say 99% of Shopify stores I don't think need a build tool.
Okay, good. I feel a little bit more like a developer now hearing somebody like you say that. So that makes me feel good. Well, and this could be a good. I don't know if you have other thoughts on that, or that'd be a kind of a cool transition as far as too, because so you'd mentioned Horizon, like you helped work on Horizon, and I know there's always only so many things that you can share whenever we have someone from Shopify on or what have you kind of type thing. But maybe you can talk a little bit about maybe what that was like contributing, because Horizon originally when it came out wasn't open source, and then it became open source, and so there's a lot of cool things there. I've recently on a project I'm working on, I'm just getting into using Horizon, and kind of building out, tweaking things, getting used to, as ashamed as I am to say this, like I really just very recently getting into theme blocks, right? And so it is such a mind shift. I don't know if you experienced that same mind shift, not only because you were helping build, build out stuff for Horizon, but just obviously, you've obviously had time playing around with it as well. So I don't know if you want to talk about that at all, or what you can say about any of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I probably can't share too many secrets, but so I was brought in to help out on Horizon in January this year, and basically I think they just were after my help because of my experience in agencies, and um, this was, as you say, about shifting your mindset with regards to theme blocks. This was new theme blocks were new to me as well, um, but I also had a shift of mindset because I'm used to working in agencies where we're building a theme for one merchant, so everything is really hyper specific in terms of what we're building something to fit your brand guidelines, whereas with Horizon, it's like everything we build has to be able to do everything. Um,
Yeah.
so that was
Hmm.
a huge mindset change for me, and it took
Hmm.
me a while to get into that really. Um, yeah, I don't know if I can really say a whole lot about things that I built. Probably the only thing that I can, yeah, no, I can't.
Yeah, and
So
that's fine. Like as far as
yeah,
like talking about specifics, but I don't know too if you. So we're both we're on the same page with this being a little bit of a mind shift and kind of getting used to that. And I think that's actually I think we should talk about that next. But as far as like the mind shift, specifically for theme blocks as opposed to just sections and blocks, and getting used to some of those limitations, but still some shared limitations. Like even though we can nest them 8 levels deep, you can create these very granular little theme blocks. We're still limited to 50 within the section still yet. And so there's you can build really granular, but you have to be careful depending on how complex it's going to be, right? So as far as maybe some of the mental models or things, was there ever like an aha moment or something that was like, oh, okay, like I get theme blocks a little bit better now, kind of type thing? I'll tell you, I'm not there yet. I'm still working through this, and I haven't quite got to my aha moment. Something like that happened with meta objects. I had a really tough time grokking like meta objects, and then at a certain point it clicked, and I wanted to meta object all the things. And now I'm assuming theme blocks is going to be similar. So I don't know if you had something like that as well. Like, are you pretty much reaching for theme blocks on the regular if you're building anything out in a theme now, or are you just still rocking sections and blocks for the most part?
yeah, so it really depends on the situation. I'm still not fully like I'm still not fully in the mode where I want to reach for theme blocks all the time. I think because I'm still in that agency mindset of we've given you a very specific outline of how this section can look. Obviously, with variations, but we haven't designed a section where you can build everything, which is what theme blocks is trying to achieve. Um, so. And as well as that, the demos that I'm building, we are generally building very specific sections, so we don't really need to compose things with theme blocks. However, actually, on that note, I will say that there are plenty of demos that I've worked on where we're doing stuff in Liquid, and I've not had to write any code because I've just been able to build it with theme blocks, which is super nice.
Yeah, I say that's pretty cool when that happens.
Yeah. Um, yeah, sorry, what was your original question?
Yeah, the original, yeah, it was just more like if there was like an aha moment or something that maybe helped. And so it does sound a little bit like it's a use case scenario right now.
Yeah.
And that was kind of where I leaned, even with a lot of merchants that I work with, where I'm not typically building with theme blocks when they're a merchant that has been on Shopify for a while and they're used to sections and blocks. I think because it is such a mental shift that I think it's more confusing than helpful. And so unless you can get someone like newer on Shopify and then you can train them on that initially, I think that's okay. But especially if you're a dev who works and then hands something off, as opposed to like if you're again like more of that agency model where you control like a lot of that, and like people can just adopt that in house. So so part of that too. I don't know if Karl had any other questions, but I think that would be an interesting thing to talk about as well. The building themes in the agency versus a theme for the public. It really is a big big difference. And a lot of people, I talk to a lot of people that are just like, I don't know why they didn't just put this in this theme. Like, why didn't they put this control in this theme or whatever? And that's been the pushback we've gotten from, or not pushback, but like the feedback. Other theme devs have mentioned when getting their theme on the theme store is they're sometimes told like, hey, you need to make this more simple, or you need to cut out like some of these other sections or settings or what have you kind of type thing, make it more broad use case kind of type thing. And then, a service providers come in and build in the extra pieces there for the quote unquote custom thing. So I don't know if you want to talk about that, because I think we have people building for the theme store, kind of the same. We have people building for the app store, where you're building a product that's used by many, many merchants, as opposed to if you're in services and you're building specific theme stuff, or even like spinning up custom apps that just need to fit this merchant use case. What sort of learnings did you get, maybe coming from that agency perspective to building a product that's to be used by like very many merchants?
Um, I think the biggest learning that I had, quite vague really, was just to learn how to accept that I don't have full control, um, and learn to, I guess, embrace the chaos a little bit, um, and yeah, recognize that there are many permutations of just, the block that I'm working on, how that's going to be used.
Yeah, because it's, especially if you're not building for the one, like the chaos being is just like we're kind of creating like this open range of controls where people can build a lot of stuff, and from the developer standpoint, you're kind of like, I mean, I don't know, that's not always a good thing, like giving somebody that many series of controls or whatever, or kind of type thing. So, and at least for me, I think it's hard a lot of times in that instance too, if I'm not building off of a design or spec, to actually build something. So that, yeah, very, very different in that regard.
Yeah. I will say that, we did build to like a generalized design, and then well, I think in the end, I think there were like 10 designs that we tried to make the theme be able to support all of those. Um, and I think the proof is in the pudding, that by being able to work with all of those 10, you can build basically any site that you need.
Yeah, and that's, they came out in a whole bunch of different. So that's interesting that they came out in different designs. You had to make it flexible enough to like meet all of these. And that was, I mean, the initial feedback too from Horizon was like, these themes look amazing. Like these like look really, really good. They don't look like free themes. So
Yeah.
initially, I think, and that was the downside of it. You could see, I think it's starting to get better. Like initially when the themes came out, they were kind of getting slaughtered in the reviews on the theme store, and I think that's more so not because necessarily any of the team did a bad job. So I hope nobody like took that like super personally. I think it is just because it's such a mental shift. People saw these like beautiful, amazing themes, and they're like, I want to build something like this. And then they started getting into theme blocks and running into like, oh, I can't do this, or I could do this, and that being hard for like, I know I can make this, but like how do I actually make this kind of type thing? So it's hard. It's definitely different.
Yeah, one piece of feedback I've heard from partners is, how do I use theme blocks and build a theme that doesn't let my client screw it up, that doesn't let the merchant, just make an absolutely terrible looking store. And I think that is really something that's difficult. I think I'm sure that teams will be having to speak to their merchant, giving them design guidance, but um, I also say to people that if you just want to get started with theme blocks, maybe don't go straight for like a button block that can be used everywhere. You can have private blocks as well, and so you can start to take you can start to use some of the advantages of theme blocks with those private ones. But then you're much more confident in terms of how these are restricted in terms of where they can be used.
Yeah, the private blocks is a good call. I figured that out after I was working on this one that I'm working on is like a mega menu, and so that's where I was like, oh shoot, like this whole 50 block limit is going to really mess with you at a certain point, kind of type thing, where you can't build too granular. But that was very helpful, because otherwise, when they open up that menu and there's everything there that they can access, kind of type thing. So the private blocks is really, really helpful for that. That's a huge bonus there. Good call out.
So I'm
Carl's
still trying to read about theme blocks in the background while you guys have this conversation. So
I
what's a
say
private
Carl's just like
block?
theme. Stop talking about theme blocks. Let's get back to Liquid.
No,
So
no, no. I'm very curious. So what's the difference between a private block and a non-private block?
So actually, yeah, it's been a while since I've used them. I can't remember exactly, but I think the main thing is that when you go to add a block in, say, your slideshow section, you can't add private blocks unless you explicitly said this section can use this block.
yeah, so
Gotcha.
like when instead of them seeing like all of these extra ones that they shouldn't be using in a specific section. So in my instance, like if I'm building out this like visual mega menu kind of type thing, so that way they can like scale these out a little bit more like flexibly. I don't want to like surface like a mega menu link list or something like that when they go to add the actual like mega menu where it's like before it gets into like a column or whatever kind of type thing. Like I don't want them to just like drop a link list without having some sort of like structure included into it. So you can make them private and then only accessible via that column, which is really helpful. That way they're just not getting like a whole bunch of extra stuff that really shouldn't be accessible to them in that specific block.
Gotcha. Sort of. Cool.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff. Like I said, it is just such a mental shift. I don't know, like it's you really have to play around with them a little bit. You have to have a good use case, I think, for it to kind of like explore that a little bit. And that was the interesting thing when I had originally was planning to do this because like I said, I want to meta object all the things. I was like, I have to build out this like more visual navigation. The client wants more controls, and I was like, I'm going to meta object this. I think like this sounds good. Like I'm doing all the things with meta objects. And everyone was like, no, try theme blocks. And I was like, that this does sound like a good use case for theme blocks. But that was the caveat of everybody like, by the way, we've done this, and like don't make it too granular because you will run out of room like with the 50 block limitation there. So maybe that's our bit of feedback. Like, give us more than 50 if we can nest them like so many deep. Because like, and I don't know, like maybe that's bad. Like Shopify is really good, like with Liquid, right? Like of like having these like good guardrails up of like this is what it should do, this is what it shouldn't do. But if I can nest them like 8 deep, like I want to be able to like go way more than 50 for these, like like. But maybe we'd run into that scenario, kind of like you mentioned before, where like we used to just like dump all these sections really into for like a specific pages. Maybe we would run into that where everyone's just creating one section and it's got like 108 blocks in it or something like that or whatever, and that's the whole page, and we don't want that necessarily or whatever. And so I think that's why you have to be careful when you're building with them, as opposed to I've not really run into a lot of instances where I've run into the 50 block limit with a standard section and block pattern. So
Yeah.
I didn't even realize there was a 50 block limit, to be honest.
dude, did I teach you something? Holy cow,
You
that's
did.
awesome. Point one for Taylor, 3008 for Dave. Like things he's taught me. So I'm on the board, Karl. Yes.
Yeah. Good. Good for you. Yeah. Exciting. So you guys want to talk some liquid hacks?
Let's
Oh
do it.
wow, just read my blog.
Just
No,
read the blog. What's
yeah,
what's your what okay, let's talk about the blog, because the blog,
Yeah.
everyone should read the
First of all,
blog. If you haven't,
it's
it is
beautiful.
required Shopify developer reading. Required. Okay?
Yeah. I
Sorry,
really
Karl,
like
go
the
ahead.
styling for what it's worth. I think it's very
thank you
pretty.
very much.
Is that homegrown or do you steal that from somewhere?
Homegrown.
Wow.
Yeah, I at the time, I mean, I don't know what it is about yellow that I was like, I really need to include yellow in any, I guess, personal branding. Um, but at the time, I was looking at a lot of like, newspaper sites. So, I mean, it doesn't look like a newspaper. My site doesn't, but a lot of the inspiration was from broadsheets and things like that.
Sure. Well, it's just, I feel like in the development community, you either have a good design aesthetic or you have no design aesthetic as a developer. And so it's always fun to meet people that have it because I don't. And so I appreciate your skill,
Thank you.
So if we're talking about the blog and
which
the
we are.
amazing design, because
Yeah.
everybody should be looking at this. Let's talk about what's the one you're most proud of as far as like these posts, like these liquid. And you can't say the arrays because like we've already talked about that extensively. So pick number two if
Right.
arrays is number one there.
The visible
What do you
edge
mean number
one.
zero?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Got the second item. It would be number
Do
one,
I
I
have
guess.
to give you the actual number,
That's
the index? Yeah, definitely visible if. I had quite a lot of fun exploring visible if with that.
yeah, and that's visible if is one of my favorites to start incorporating because
Yeah.
I don't know who originated like this plan or spearheaded this originally or whatever, but like this is fantastic now. Like I love having the option to conditionally display settings within Shopify because otherwise and I'm in this weird mix of like a lot of config. Like I'll bump over to meta objects now, where we're connecting the meta object. So a lot of the config is within the meta object, right? But because you have this back and forth of it either needs to be there or you give them this overwhelming cascade of settings within the sections itself. And so visible if like cuts that down significantly. So yes, that's awesome. Good call out.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. At times I feel like I'm looking for excuses to use visible if it's one of those APIs that just feels really satisfying to use.
Yeah,
Now that
definitely.
you're with the mothership, Dave, when did you write this article? I guess what I'm getting at is in the old early days, you liked to spelunk around to see what you could figure out on your own. But now that you're inside, like, do you just go straight to the team and say, "Give me all the dirty details," or do you still try to figure it out from the outside?
Still trying to figure it out from the outside. I don't think I've actually looked at the source code for like Liquid and in the Liquid repo. Um, with
You could.
visible if it, yeah, I could. Um, but I'm just too lazy. Um, so whilst I was working on Horizon, started playing around with Visible If, and I think the first thing I talk about in the blog post is this idea that I had to say Visible If false, so the setting is never visible, and that came up whilst I was working with Horizon, and we had every Friday we shared as a team things that we've been working on. I remember sharing that with the team and saying that from memory, when I was in agency, I could actually see a use case for this, for I guess pseudo environment variables, where you basically you want the settings to be hidden so that the client can't accidentally change them. Um, so yeah, that I wanted to share that when Visible If got released, and then I thought, that's going to be a really short blog post, so let's take a look at what else you can do. And I found a couple of surprising things, a couple of things that, well, one thing that I cannot think of a use case for, but it's interesting that it can be done, and that is that Visible If when you use it in a section or a block, sorry, no, when you use it in the global theme settings, it can check the value of the section or block that you currently have active. I can't, as I say, I can't think of an actual use case for this, but it's one of those things where it works, so I share it, and somebody might decide, oh, I've got the perfect use case for this thing.
Yeah, someone's gonna come up with a reason to use this. Let's say offhand, I'm trying to think like why would I use this or whatever. But like yeah, it's always really interesting of like you could. So I'm sure there's
Yeah,
a good use case for it.
I think everything else I mentioned in that blog post, there is a use case, right? The one I like the most is an idea I had for setting validation. So in places, the example that I give in the blog post is where you have um, a block of text that uses the inline rich text setting type, and as I think everybody gets upset about with the rich text settings, you can't say like, no, I don't want the merchant to be able to use a link inside of this, because then maybe the container for that rich text is a link itself. So you can use visible if to do some validation there. So if the text contains a link, you then show a warning message that says, "Hey, this is an accessibility issue because you've also got a link set down here."
That's awesome. That's a really good use case.
I need to
Yeah.
do more theme development. I don't use this stuff at all anymore.
I was gonna say, yeah, how much theme you've been working so much on the app, so and we're just gonna link to the blog in the show notes. I'm not gonna link to
Yeah,
specific blogs because you just need to read all of them. So like
Yes, they're all very
exactly.
read
good
all of these. They're all
and they're
Thank you
great,
very
beautiful.
much.
and they're yeah, code examples and everything. Like what more could you want?
What do you use for your blog backend? If you don't mind me asking. Is it
Um,
static?
it is static, yes. So at the moment, so the blog is built with Astra and all the content is on Contentful. For the longest time, I've been wanting to migrate from Contentful, but I can't decide if I want the content to actually live in the repo or if I want to use another CMS. One of the reasons why I built this blog and used Contentful is because previously I had all the content in a Git repo and I just didn't enjoy editing the content. But now I'm in a position where I'm like, I don't enjoy opening Contentful. I kind of like editing Markdown files in VS Code.
Uh-oh. It's tough. Hard to know what to do.
Yeah, there's a couple of them that are good, like CMSs for Markdown, but yeah, like I don't know what migrate. That feels like kind of heavy, like having to migrate everything out into because it's not Markdown in Contentful, correct? Like
So I think they have their own data type, but I always used a Markdown field, so it is easy enough for me. And I do actually
nice.
have a migration script locally ready for if I decide to put it in my repo.
I'm just waiting to
Um,
pull the trigger. Just
yeah,
bam.
yeah.
What about performance? I know a lot of people struggle with making sure that well, maybe they don't struggle with it. They just write it and then we struggle with it. But writing Liquid code in a performant way, given all that you know about Liquid and your deep understanding, are there some common gotchas or just some tips you would share with people to make sure that the things they're doing don't introduce performance issues?
The only one that really comes to mind is when you're using loops and when someone's writing a loop and they forget to break early. That is a big one. I've so when people make mega menus in Shopify
Taylor.
themes, be, because that's quite difficult because the link lists can't have content associated with them. You kind of have to. I mean, there are multiple different solutions. The most common one I've seen is people nowadays is people using meta objects. So they loop through their list, and as they're looping through the list, every single time they loop through all of these meta objects to find is this one associated with this list item, and that really gets costly. So I guess do what you can to avoid doing that ahead of time, but also if you can't avoid it, then just make sure that as soon as you've found the content you need, that you break out of that loop.
It's a good one.
Loops are always the thing from a performance perspective, huh? That's always especially if you're running multiples like it gets bad quick. So,
Yeah,
but that's the
absolutely.
nice thing. At least I guess that I hadn't thought about that with meta objects too, because in most instances you do want to avoid like looping over all of them wherever you can. Like if you're just but like there's definitely use cases where I have done that. So I've done that for some CSS settings that I wanted to grab for like where we're dropping all these custom colors off of these like product tiles. And so we need to have all these variables in play, like, and so trying to figure out a better, more performant way to do that definitely took me a minute. So, because you could tell, when you're like, oh no, I'm breaking this, like this is bad.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that reminds me actually, I've seen patterns as well. I don't think they're as common now because meta fields are so much better, but um, I've seen a lot of patterns in the past where people relate products to each other by having certain elements of the title match. So it's like if maybe they'll just have the color at the very end of the title, split by a hyphen, and then what they'll do is as they're rendering the products page, they'll loop through all of the other products on the site in the hopes that they'll find one with the same title minus that color. And actually, that's something as well that you need to be careful with if you insist on doing that. For whatever reason, one of the things you have to be really careful with is pagination limits as well, because if your merchant has enough products on the store, then there's a risk that loop doesn't even reach the product titles that it needs to look for. So in that case, just use meta objects or meta
Yeah,
fields.
I've never done that before. So that's yeah. There's all sorts of hacky stuff, or like tags is another one now. Like I want to move everything to meta fields because then you can get
Yeah.
out of having to loop through and do anything with tags. Like
So this
and
was
depending on the
something.
merchant, they dump so many
So,
tags into stuff. It's wild. Like
yeah, and I think there's so little friction to adding a tag that merchants, you'll say, oh yeah, we've added this meta field for you for this product, and they're like, can't we just dump it in a tag? It's like, but your data is much better, like structure-wise, if it's in the meta field. But I
yes,
mean,
one hundred
so
percent.
this was so when I learned as much as I did about Liquid at the start, I was working at Strawberry and we were building a ticketing site on Shopify, which I would not encourage anybody to do. But in building this ticketing site, this was where I learned about so many of the limitations of the platform. And because, for example, we had to build all of our collection filtering completely bespoke, because if you're looking for an event, you're probably looking for an event on or after a specific date. At the time, you couldn't even filter collections by meta fields. It had to be by tags. So, you know, all of the apps on the store as well, they didn't support that use case of like searching for dates. So we had to build everything completely bespoke there. There was also, I think some of the collections had like 40,000 plus products in. And I mean, this is absolutely awful what we did, but we had to, because we couldn't afford to build an app at the time, we had to we had to just load all of that data on the front end. So like every product page, the collection starts with this huge description, and no one's ever said this, but I'm pretty sure a good chunk of the reason why is so that we can load all of those tickets without anybody noticing.
That's awesome. That's sometimes like when, especially when we only had certain things accessible to us. I don't know. I think people were using metafields like before I was, but I feel like they didn't click for me until it came in with it became native on the storefront. You had to use apps before to access them unless you were doing like that hacky URL where you could like update specific metafield values, and then if you accidentally misspelled it, like you created new metafield values on a spelling error kind of type thing, and then you couldn't really access it because you couldn't figure out how you spelled it. And so yeah, like it's so much different now compared to some of the things that we can do. So yeah, that's awesome though. Like
Yeah, the platform has just evolved and grown so much in the last 6 or 7 years. It's completely different to what it was when I started working on it.
yes, 100%. So if we can give any feedback for the UX designers and stuff listening on here, make it harder to add a tag to anything in Shopify and
Yes.
make it easier for us to get meta fields. So that way, just add another couple of steps. Be like maybe 2 times. Be like, are you sure you want to add this tag? Are you sure you want to? Maybe have a performance cost in there of like, ooh, you're gonna do a liquid loop. Like this is gonna this anywhere. Like this is gonna cause problems. Like we need some kind of a warning that makes them click more than once or twice. It's too easy. They even get like a little nice drop down. It's like, oh yeah, this is a tag already to use. Like, nah, get rid of it all. Carl, you're muted.
I know, I know. I was just testing, see if you cared. No, I was just gonna say, I'm sure they're listening to this for their pencils in hand, ready for tips on how to improve things. But that's the thing about this all, right? Like, I live in both worlds. I don't have as much time to be Shopify focused as I used to want to be. But when I focus on the app side, I'll come back, come up for air, and like everything's changed on the theme side. It's like, oh my goodness, there's so much to learn. But it's also so good. It's very exciting to see how much is improved because I used to hate working with Liquid. After, coming from the Rails world, ERB, and having sort of direct access to data objects, things like that. It's like, why do I have to jump through hoops to make an array? Like, why is all this hard? I understand performance, other reasons, right? But the language itself has gotten so much better in the last couple of years. So people nowadays, these kids don't know how good they have it.
It's funny that you should say about that kind of frustration with Liquid because I remember I've had to build a few sites over the years with a CMS called Statamic in the in PHP world, and I really love working with that CMS. However, every time I use their templating language, well, actually, this might have changed now, but back when I used to use it, every time I used it, I was so upset that I couldn't use assign to just create my own variables in the template. But I
Right? You're like, why
suppose,
not? This is so good. You guys need to
yeah,
bring this in.
I suppose that's like, you have control over the back end, so you can give yourself those variables as well. But yeah, it's just frustrating when you just want to work in the template.
Yeah.
No.
I always try to remind myself too, if I ever feel frustrated with Liquid, especially in the Shopify context, I have to remember, okay, like this is used to power a bajillion stores getting millions of requests. Like there are certain design considerations that I'm not even aware of that have to be made to make sure this is performant and actually does its primary mission. Uh, so you just learn with it.
I
Yeah.
thought you were gonna say you work with JavaScript for a little bit and then you feel better about
Ah,
Liquid.
okay, again, it's just kind of a thing. I don't hate JavaScript per
He
se.
does.
I hate using JavaScript. It's different.
What?
The DX. I just like writing Ruby better.
Yeah. No, I okay. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um,
Anyway, do you have
anyway,
another topic of conversation, or should we start talking about Changelog stuff?
yeah, I was gonna check to see if there was anything else that Dave wanted to mention before we started moving into other pieces. So like other fun stuff you're working on that you can talk about, or like any other fun Liquid stuff too. Like obviously we want to
Uh,
share whatever it is that you've got going on that we're allowed to
yeah,
share.
only thing I guess I should plug is I'm giving a talk in Leeds in
Yes.
October at Shopify Partners Meetup. So if anybody watching this is local, or even if you're not local, I expect you to turn up.
Awesome. Is it recorded at all?
I don't think so. It's a relatively small meetup, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Trying to see if
maybe
I
I could
can talk
ask.
Jordan into it.
Yeah, come on,
Even maybe
Jordan. You
just
gotta record
just
Dave.
just with his phone or something, Like
Yeah,
it doesn't have
exactly.
to
Yeah,
be, huge production value or whatever. Just get us in, Dave. Come on. I'll talk to Jordan. See, maybe we can all work something out.
back in the days of
Awesome.
watching like bootleg, like VHSs recorded in a
Yes.
cinema, you get to watch somebody stand up and go and walk to the toilet.
That's right. Now, I'm having a brain moment here. I feel like I was looking at your LinkedIn profile not too long ago, and someone on there endorsed you for public speaking. Is that correct?
Yes.
So do you enjoy public speaking?
So this is something I've not really done in a long time. When I was at university, I had some successes with a bit of public speaking. When I was at university, I took part in something called the BBC Barclays Bank of America Technology Challenge,
That is
and
quite the, yeah, it's a
yeah,
mouthful.
so it was like every team had to do a project for one of these three companies, and we all had to pitch our project at the BBC at the end of it. That seemed to go really well, and then yeah, I did a few other presentations while I was at uni. Got invited to go to my old college and do a couple of guest lectures there. I say guest lectures because um, at one point my old lecturer got me through security at the college by saying, "No, he's a guest lecturer," and I just feel like that sounds really professional. So really, I was just invited to talk.
Ah, that's really cool. Well, I'm sure you're quite good at it, and I'm sure I won't be able to make the trip to Leeds. You know, wife, kids, that kind of stuff. They wouldn't want me to leave, but otherwise, I'd totally be
Yeah.
there. Taylor, you're an international traveler now. Barcelona, West Virginia.
Barcelona. It's just the one place.
No,
So
Toronto.
Toronto. Yeah, I've got two under my belt. That's so that's yeah.
You
I'd
have no
I'd love to
excuse.
come visit. I need yeah. I would say I need to figure out a time that I can because so you have that partner meetup. There's lots of really good partner meetups happening there. ShopQuest is happening over in India as well. Prakar's setting that up again this year, and they do such a great job. So there's a lot of really cool Shopify dev meetups. I wish we could go to more of them. So I think
Yeah.
it's just great. I love seeing the in-person events happening too. I think that's awesome. So thank you for helping support that too. I think that's great that you're lending your voice and your guest lecturer speaking abilities there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I attended this meetup in Leeds back in, I think it was in February. Got chatting to a guy there who attends a lot of conferences and meetups, and he was saying that he thinks that people are so used to interacting with AI now that people are wanting to go to in-person meetups and conferences more
Yes.
to interact with real people.
100%, man. I think that's something that I think we've talked. I feel like we've talked about this before a couple of times, or at least I talked to a lot of people about this. So if I haven't done
You
it
do
on the
talk a
podcast, I'm
lot.
sorry. I
Yeah.
do talk a lot, but I feel like people are going to crave more human interaction, not less, as AI evolves, because we do rely on it so much for so many things. And you've even got these, I don't know, like Twitter has this like companion mode with Grok thing now or whatever, which just feels really icky. But like I feel like people are going to more and more crave like the in-person human interaction, which isn't a bad thing. I feel like we kind of swung like really tech heavy with like social media like a lot, where more people completely invested there and then forgot to talk to each other in person kind of type thing. And I feel like now it's swung so much further with AI that I think it will swing back more that way. So that's great. I love hearing about events. As far as that goes, always feel free. Anybody listening to this who's made it this far, tag
Picard.
us so that way we can share about Shopify events that are happening in person everywhere. Like I don't care where it is. Like we'll share about it for sure. So or at least I will. So you'll have to
I
run it
will
through Karl
share
to
that.
figure out if he's going to share it or not. So
I'm easily bribed though, so
cheese balls.
cheese balls. Anywho, speaking of cheese balls, Taylor, resident cheese ball. I don't know. Do you
Resident
want
cheese ball.
to share your change log? David, this is where you and I go get coffee. Back about
Yeah,
five
you guys
minutes.
take a nap, do whatever it is you got to do. So though. Yes, I'm happy to jump into the change line as long as there's nothing else. Dave, we covered everything you wanted to cover. Like we're ready to
Yeah.
rock. Okay, cool. So sorry,
Yes.
I was pulling up my screen. I was like, so drum roll,
I
please.
have to get my pick. I'm gonna be right back. Ow.
Carl's legitimately going to
No,
get
no,
a
no.
snack break. So the change log. Just run through a couple of these. I'll try to make these as brief as possible. There's a couple that have action required, so I'm going to talk about those real quick first. There's a setting for permits skew sharing argument to false when creating a fulfillment service returns an error. So if your app is or service is currently passing in a false value, you need to update it to send true instead or omit the parameter entirely. So really important bit there. That is not something that I deal with. It's also references the REST API, the admin REST API. I didn't realize that this was a thing at all. So like, is this still a thing? Like the REST API, people are still
Oh
using this?
yeah.
I thought everybody transitioned to the GraphQL, like all the things. So okay, there you go. So if you're using the REST API, you need to fix this. It's a problem. So the other big thing that everybody's excited about is the next gen developer platform is now available to all app developers. This is really cool
Woo.
because it's amazing. I spun up a Plus shop to play around with on a dev store, and it was awesome. So this is cool because I think this makes so much more sense. Was literally helping somebody through an issue with launching an extensions only app the other day. We couldn't figure out why the extension was not showing up in the dev store, but it was showing up in prod, and it was because in dark times, this is for legacy purposes here. What our current state is, or whatever, now that we're not next gen developer platform 100% yet, our partner dashboard, you would have to enable a specific developer preview in order to gain access to this. So even though you're on a dev stores mimic the advanced store plans. They don't mimic like Plus shops and stuff. And so this has been a problem for a long time for people trying to support and build for Plus. And so you could enable these checkout and customer extension previews, but the dev store that they were trying to spin up did not have this preview enabled. And so we were trying to figure out all these like complicated steps or whatever of like, oh, maybe this is not linked properly in the toml and like all this other stuff, and like we need to like rebuild. And nope, it was just because the dev store did not have the right preview checked off. So in the next gen dev platform, for those of you that are going to be spinning up stores from this, you'll never have to worry about this because you would just spin up a Plus shop and connect it that way. So very cool. There's a lot of great stuff in here as well. The managed meta object definitions, I think that people are very excited about this as well. Lots of very cool stuff there. There are a couple of things. I'll link to it as well. If you do have a dashboard managed app that has extensions for your app and it's dashboard managed, you do need to migrate in order for it to come over to the next gen dev platform. Nick, oh my gosh, last name is escaping me now. Like I feel so bad.
Wesselman?
Yes, shared a video on Twitter about how to do this as well. We'll include that in the show notes too. Thank you for saving me, Karl. I apologize, Nick, for forgetting your last name.
I got you, Nick.
We'll try to move on very quickly here. The next thing in the changelog is you can now build announcement bar extensions for the thank you page or customer account pages. So this is kind of cool. People love their announcement bars. I don't know. To me, and I think a lot of other people, a lot of the research says that people are kind of like blind to them because they're there all the time. So, but you can build them now, and people like them. And by people, I mean merchants. They'll pay to have them built. So take a look at that. That should be a good thing as well. Real quick, a couple of other things here. So for, next thing is there's an @in context directive now to support visitor consent for privacy compliant checkouts. That's a whole bunch of fancy stuff just to say devs can now pass in buyer consent preferences like analytics, marketing, all this other stuff to cart operations. So this is really helpful if you are building something specifically for checkout and you need some fancy stuff. Check out @in context directive. We'll link to that in the show notes as well. And finally, there's some stuff in here for tax codes related to the HS code. Global HS code is now supporting GraphQL admin API. Taxes are important. I usually don't get it, but like with a lot of this like market stuff where we now have the ability for country or regions of origin, you can kind of like really dive into that. You can add HS codes. So check that out as well. That will be very helpful, I'm sure, when it comes to like tax and all that stuff. So there you go. We'll have all that in the show notes. And Karl's awake. Karl's awake.
Okay. Whew. Thanks. What just happened? Appreciate that little break. I was up late last night, Taylor. It was great. A
So
power
rude.
nap.
So rude.
No, I'm just picking. I actually do appreciate it because there is so much that happens. It's hard to keep track of. Having you
Yeah.
filter it. Anyway. All right. Well, it's time for the third half of our show. My favorite part. Everyone waits to get to this part. That's why we have two listeners. You saw we have two now, right? Not just Prakar's, another guy. Um, Picks of the week.
The
This is
other
where
guy. There's
or gal. I don't know. Um, this is where we pick something that we're interested in or excited about. Could be food related. Could be something else. So since you guys have done a lot of talking, I'll give you a break. I'll go first. Thanks. It's my podcast. I do what I want. So I have a book I'm picking. It's called Danger UXB. Oh, hey, look, he's shaking his head. Are you familiar with this, Dave? No, okay. He's just. Well, I was
I
realizing
think he was
after about
just like,
your
yes,
country.
I
So
too am well read and I also like
yes,
books. So you guys are just showing off how much smarter you are than
I
me.
can't remember
So
how I
that's
stumbled
cool.
upon this exactly, but it's about the story of bomb disposal during World War II by the British Army and the other forces that were involved in that, which was something that no one really thought about. But during the Blitz, there obviously had a lot of bombs falling, and not all the bombs went off. And so then you've got a bomb sitting there, perhaps in a critical location, and you're like, what do we do? Is it a dud, or is it just waiting to go off, or how do we handle it? And so they had teams of people whose job was to dismantle these bombs, and it was obviously very dangerous work, and there's a lot of guesswork in terms of how things actually functioned, and so a lot of hard lessons learned there. But it's a good book, and there's also a 1970s era British drama, which was on A&E back in the day. Apparently, I found the DVD at my local library, which is it's okay. If you like British dramas in the 70s, but it does the same thing. So I highly recommend the book. This one's by James Owen. I think there's one or two with a similar title, so you might check that out. It's a good piece of history to learn about.
Nice.
That's mine.
Very cool.
Yeah. The whole thing. One more thought about it. It baffles me is when they're working on these things, just the entire time you gotta be thinking like there's a moment where like you'll never know if you did this wrong or not because like disaster is so instantaneous and so complete that it just that would mess with me so much just to be sitting there thinking I could be completely gone and never realize it. That's weird. Anyway, death is usually slower. So, and on that happy note, Dave, do you have a pick?
Yeah, so I'll not bore anybody with additional tech topics. Um, Sorry for some background noise there. Um, my pick of the week is the Warhammer 40,000 Dawn of War Definitive Edition, I think it's called. I don't know if either of you have ever played any Warhammer, have any
Mm-mm.
interest in it. No. So it's
I've
an
wanted to,
RTS
just
game,
haven't.
right? It's an RTS game, Dawn of War is, that came out, I think, about 20 years ago, and they've recently, I guess, remastered it a little bit and updated it. I've been playing it lately. I don't play many games, but um, this has just taken me right back to being a kid, sitting there on my computer. It's been a hell of a lot of fun, and I must confess, it's really giving me the urge to actually buy some models to paint as well. So might
That's
start wasting
awesome.
all of my spare cash on that soon.
That's yeah. That's you gotta have the good hobby, man.
Yeah.
That's so. Have you seen too? They've talked a lot about maybe doing a movie too, or I've seen that a lot for Warhammer. Like
Yes,
there's
I have
everyone's always like
heard.
Henry Cavill's going to be in this, but I feel like they've said that about like 15 other different movies because everyone's just really excited that like he likes nerdy stuff too. Yes, like he's
I,
awesome. Let's do
I
it.
think he is actually like officially part of it, but I don't know in what
Okay, awesome.
capacity. Yeah.
That's cool. I think there was some recent Netflix thing too that was like a series of shorts that were all video game related, and one of them was a Warhammer one,
Oh, really?
if I'm
Hmm.
remembering correctly. You might check that out if you
That's
have
cool.
Netflix.
Nice. All right.
I no longer
Well,
have a subscription, so I can't look it up. Sorry. Taylor.
that's well, you guys, I'm gonna pick a Shopify specific one because kind of saved my bacon a little bit this week. So I don't. I usually try to pick something a little bit more broad, but so Andrea with Next Tools, he's done
Ah,
Super Easy App. We've had him on the podcast before, but and he also like rocked it at editions. He did like the shop tank thing or whatever kind of type thing, and so but we had this thing come up with a merchant, and I was basically like, like we actually can't do this in Shopify the way that we want to because we wanted to give a discount based on a specific payment method selected, and with functions and checkout UI extensions, like you have to run a function, and the function doesn't actually have access to the selected payment method, probably for good reason, right? And so, but however, like at least at the moment, you can actually do this. Like Andrea figured this
what?
out, and I believe he talked about this on the podcast, and I just forgotten about it because I was like, you can't do this. And I was like, wait, I'm gonna go like diving around in the Shopify partner Slack to see Andrea, see if he's answered this question for somebody before, and he does. So like you can do this with syncing using a checkout UI extension to sync back some like cart line item properties. So he's got an app attributes pro that does this for you like automatically, and you can opt in for it, and then you can combine that with super easy. So it really helped out a merchant that I'm working with, and I could have spun this up custom and spent like way more time, but it makes more sense to like just go with the app. And I've kind of been enjoying that lately, anyways, with finding apps that let you do more custom stuff or like use them as tools, not replacements for things. And so I'll still run a
Yeah.
couple. We have to do some stuff still custom, and that's okay. But I'll ship just that stuff, and then we'll use his app for a lot of these other things. So very cool use case. Andrea's awesome and always super helpful everywhere he is talking about functions and stuff like that. So, and he's not even throwing his app out there. Most of the time, it's just like, yeah, you can't do this. Just very good authority on the subject.
Yeah.
So definitely check that out or him out.
Yeah. Andrea is amazing.
Yeah, we'll link to his podcast episode again. That's what we'll do. How about that?
Perfect. All right, gents. Well, we've done it. You wasted another perfectly good hour. You could have been coding, listening to the Liquid Week podcast. Dave, thanks for joining us. Taylor, good to see you as always. And those of you that made it this far, hope you had a good workout, enjoyed your listen, and we'll see you on the next one.
Cheers,
Bye bye.
guys.
Ciao.